Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith along with Jeff Lewis. This is episode 2 with Jeff. We're going to play this backwards. We already done A, but this is B. We're putting B first because we're going to talk a little bit about the US Open, so it's more current. Known Jeff for 30 years. It's great to have him visit. I'm almost 70, and Jeff said, Steve, you look so good. But you did look old when you were 50. Did you say that?
I don't remember saying that.
Yeah. Okay, let's get right into it. Jeff's got a big-time tennis background, total tennis junkie. Talk about overextending on the serve.
Overextending.
Before we get into the US Open, overextending.
Overextending.
Reach,
yeah.
you got to reach, you got to reach.
Yeah, reach, get up, go get there, get it. It's just a tip I see that I think is over-exaggerated. Intuitively it makes sense to get higher, but I think, and I think its origins come from the waiter serve tray, because, to hit a good waiter serve tray, you have to let the ball drop in. Your wrist wants to be in a neutral position. And if you're on the wrong grip, that's just the grip. That's just, it makes sense to let it drop and just twist your shoulder in. So trying to get someone with a palm up to try to extend is like, it's brutal in many ways. But anyways, I think that's where it comes from. You just, if people come and they don't want to make changes in their grip, I'm like, all right, you got to let it drop to your ear. And you'll have a very good serve. So I think, it's just maybe that's also where it came from. But it's also intuitive. Reach up, get higher. But yeah, lots of negative things I found from unnaturally trying to reach. I think the way body segments work is you uncoil. You can't just get to a body segment and all of a sudden try to extend it more than the other ones. So it hurts power when you do that. I think it kind of interrupts the body's natural kinetic chain. I think I've seen injuries, 100% I've seen injuries caused by it. Just people kind of just ripping their rotator cuff out of their shoulder slowly and surely, and I've definitely seen some injuries caused by trying to just overextend. Actually I was talking with Yvonne about this today, that we were looking at Federer, and, we were pretty convinced that he probably puts just a tad bit of spin on his first serve. Like, it's not completely flat. He just he comes in and puts a little spin. I think being able to impart forward rotation over your head is huge, and you can only do that if you have room to go up. So if you're overextending, there's no room to go up. You can't impart forward rotation on the ball. It encourages hitting down more, which isn't a thing. We know 9 feet off the ground, straight line, skims the top of the net, hits the back of the service line. And that's not including gravity and air resistance. So you got to, hit forward a little bit over that net.
I just wrote down 10 points. Our visiting coaches and students, parents this week were fortunate to listen to Jeff. On the serve, bend and bow.
Versus
turn and tilt.
Turn and tilt, yeah.
Make comments on that if you would.
Well, I think Carlos Alcaraz has made some slight positive changes on his serve, and one of those being he was definitely a bend and bower. Yeah, I just think it's this theory. You when you look at people who do it correctly, they turn their body and tilt their shoulders up, and then if their toss is out in front, the hip does go out. But the hip is really a response to turning and tilting and tossing out in front. If you just try to stick your hip out, you're just putting pressure on your lower back. You're moving your body segments out of alignment. And I just think there's this theory that somehow the bending and unbending of the body somehow translates into racket head speed. And I haven't been able to, just from the information I've seen, I've never really been able to see how that works. Again, injury prevention, lower back, torquing out of a compromised position. And I've seen it so many times where kids just get hit, and adults just hit bigger serves from turning rather than trying to just kind of keep their body straight on and get that bow and arrow position.
When you jump, 5 miles per hour.
I love that demo. Vic just puts the racket on his shoulder and just jumps into the ball, and you see it kind of dribble down. It's like, that's how much jumping helps you.
5 miles per hour. Yeah, so we went in detail last week with Jeff's background. I've known him 30 years, but he was fortunate to run the Vic Braden Tennis College in Orlando, then work for Vic out in California. I remember when Andy Roddick used to ask him, obviously one of the best servers at one time, and was asked, how do you serve? He says, I don't know. But I've heard him say in recent years, it's all in the legs. And I do think they look like they're going up and down an elevator instead of, coiling and the interaction of body segments. If you could go, I'll just start this and you can finish from the notes I wrote down with the students. Separating body segments as far as power and ground reaction force and such.
Yeah, I just think it's a good key phrase, a good thing for kids to memorize. Like, how do you hit hard? Well, racketed speed is created by separating body segments and then bringing them back together with a ground reaction force. And obviously it's more complicated than that. There's braking of other body segments and acceleration here, reactive brakes happening. It's actually a pretty complicated procedure that I think is hard to teach someone to do. I know when I work with little kids, I'm like, here, throw the ball, and they'll all just point their elbow forward and they'll kind of just chuck it. And then you say, no, throw the ball further. And you'll see them naturally kind of bring their elbow a little further back and start to turn their body. And then you put them in a competition with their other little friend and throw it. Who can throw it the furthest? And you'll start to see kids will start to learn how to use body segments if you're doing it with force. I think it's so much better to have kids playing sports. And I like to do it bilaterally because tennis, you're hitting off both sides of the body. So I'll teach them throw lefty, throw righty. Just throw cones for distance off either side of the body. I think generating force through body segments is something that should be best learned when you're younger. Because I see people try to do it to adults who haven't played sport their whole life, and they just simplify it as, you just got to turn your shoulders more than your hips. And I don't know if you've ever seen an adult who's never played sports just try to turn their shoulders more than their hips. It doesn't look much better than it did before. They still look very stiff, and I think coordinating those body segments is best learned. That is one of the few things in tennis that it still needs to be supervised, but you can learn it naturally, organically, if you just, think intuitively.
I think first and foremost, I should pick up my own athletic ability, but I've said many times after teaching some adults, can they really drive a car? Uh-oh. It does take some athleticism to drive a car, a little coordination. But more on the serve with little kid tennis, I think it would be great if little kid could just stand right in the center of the baseline and they could serve the ball and it could go anywhere. It doesn't have to go in the box.
100%.
But the people that are making rules, like say Quick Start Tennis years ago or the initiative, the 10 and under initiative, it's so logical and so intelligent for a kid to put the racket in the pizza position and pull down. You mentioned this, the serve, horizontal versus vertical. Elaborate upon that, how the serve has more horizontal movements than it does the up, down, vertical. Yeah,
well, I just think body segments, if you look how the body is designed, you have the knees in alignment, hips are horizontal, you got your shoulders are horizontal. And I just think everything uncoils horizontally. And then I think, if you just sit there and you just do that, it doesn't have really the serve look. But if all of a sudden you get that tilt look, you just look exactly like a great server. You just think about uncoiling body segments horizontally. And then if you throw anything out of alignment of that horizontal, like if you bend your knees, your body can pivot from your knees. So you can keep horizontal alignment by pivoting your knees. If you try to bend your back or your hip or like that, that's not the way the body's meant to work. And then again, if that elbow drops, elbow goes too high, too low, then now you're throwing that horizontal plane out of alignment.
I heard Tom Cruise say this, the body will follow the eyes. Talk about the eyes on the serve. The Japanese player visiting here with his mom. Vic Braden used to say, are you looking for airplanes? They just look straight up.
Yeah.
If you'd comment on that, please.
No, I got that from Vic. He always just talk about you're going to throw where you're going to look. And you just see people stare straight up over their head. That toss isn't going far enough out in front.
Chin up, chin up, chin up. Probably wants a cracker. Chin up, like a parrot. Chin up. You could just guess what people have been taught: down together, up together.
Yeah, the exception is Federer with his terrifying stare. And I haven't heard a lot of people talk about this, but
I heard that first time from you.
Yeah, no, I did an analysis on him on his serve, and it was very subtle. But I was doing this analysis. I was just really looking at his serve. I was like, he goes in to start to toss the ball. His tossing arm's going up, and his eyes are staring straight at his opponent still. Tossing arm still goes up. Eyes are still staring at the returner. Ball's almost out of his hand. His eyes are still staring at the returner. And he doesn't turn his eyes to the ball until it's out of his hand and on his way up. I was thinking, well, that's not fair. Because I'm like, basically you can't you can't cheat. You can't because I do that to people all the time. Like I'll stand and I know they have a weak second serve. It's probably coming to my backhand. So as soon as they take their eyes off me, I'll jump to the left. If I want to just try to hit a winner off the forehand, not that I should be doing that, Steve, sorry. But I think with Federer, I mean, what a cool thing. What an extra cool thing for the maestro to be able to pull off,
With the serve, you do have two. Robert Laver said you don't need to differentiate so much between the first and second. Laver, just like they should have quotes for Arthur Ashe and other legends like Roger Federer. If I keep the Rocket, if I can't get 1 out of 2 in, I don't deserve to win the point anyway. But to go and serve big with extra variables, what comes to your mind? I wrote that down, that you use that those two words together, talking to students about strokes. Extra variables.
Yeah. Just, you're talking about simplicity, just efficiency?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, efficiency, the definition, the least amount of moving parts. And I like to make fun of kids and over exaggerate really stylish strokes where you have the ninja and then you have the short take back, the little dipper, and different ways you can prepare. And I think it feels stylish, and kids, maybe adults too, think of pros and how cool it looks when they have this little extra elbow inverted racket face. And it's you don't want to be, stylish. You want to be effective and efficient. So least amount of moving parts. Yeah. Just simplify. What do you have to do? And again, going back to Federer, I think, and I was talking to Yvonne about this too. You could look at his forehand and be and again, some people might think this is a positive, but I think he does have a lot of, compared to a lot of players, there's a lot of wrists sometimes in his stroke, and he gets a little too far away from the body and you see some shanks. But the positives, I mean, he had one of the most compact strokes I've ever seen. From his turn, the racket just went down, where everyone else has this little extra motion, where from the turn, they kind of go back a little further. And I just feel like those milliseconds, those fractions of a second that you're saving to execute your swing are vital, because that could be time you're cognitively making decisions, consciously or not, or you're moving closer up on the ball. And I think the things he did well overpower, the little thing you got a little risky on his forehand, which you could see. I mean, he definitely would shank a forehand every once in a while. But
one of my favorite aspects in watching Federer was how he would, during the match, entertain himself by giving the balls to the ball boys. And I mean, just think about somebody who played so many matches. When you think about Milan, though, when a guy who's played that much tennis, he's in his 40s. I told this young boy from Japan, he's 16. I mean, he doubles his life. He's 32. Just go for it. Change your serve. Don't compromise. Don't negotiate. There's no let's work within what you have. Just let's go back to grip, swing, body. Here's something I'd love to hear things for the first time. I've never heard this said before. Dogs split step. What do you comment on that one?
Yeah, I did a cool interview with Dr. Wendy Weimer, I believe was her name. She's a biomechanist.
She's on your website, right?
Yeah, she's on my website. I did a long interview with her, and I was just trying to dig a little deeper into how much, these, pros really do, if at all, pre-stretch their wrist muscle or their forearm muscles. And anyways, we ended up getting in a conversation about split step. She actually is the one that brought it up, and she's not really a tennis person, but she was she's like, I know how you guys split step in tennis. She's like, well, we see that in the animal kingdom. She's like, dogs will actually, if they know they're about to take off, you'll actually see them settle in and take slack, remove slack from their muscles, and then they start to go again. So you can actually see it in the animal kingdom, the split step. But again, I don't know. That's why I called her, and I can't remember the whole conversation, but it's nice picking people's brains about tennis stuff relative to tennis like that, because you always get some good insights.
We don't have to wait till next week to repeat your website. Tell us how people can look at all the content you have online.
I think you just search the internet for Jeff Lewis Tennis or Victory Tennis Programs.
Jeff Lewis Tennis or Victory Programs. Animal Kingdom. How about our warm-ups? What do you think of the Animal Kingdom exercises?
I love it. I want more of it. I got it all on video. I can't wait to share it with the world.
All you have to do is go to YouTube, and Yvonne does the monkey. That's pretty impressive.
Yes.
There's the caterpillar. There's the the frog, the
inchworm,
crab walk, the inchworm is a caterpillar.
Yeah, no.
The swan.
Yeah, you got to learn to steal stuff, Steve. Now it's a tennis animal kingdom exercise.
Animal kingdom exercise. With going forward here, Vic, or I should say, Jeff being a Vic Braden coach from Mike Valentine a couple weeks ago. Don't confuse me with the facts. I've already made up my mind. With charting, we had done a number of things in the time that you've been here. We went through T charting, line by line, flow, momentum, zones, just charting like players do. I was just telling a young player today who she's good enough to have, at the age of 14, played at the US Open and played the Wimbledon 14 events. It's how many times do you get to the green zone? How many times do you get to the forecourt? 10 and a half feet up. You divide the service box in half. Green zone points, directionals for charting. Just how many drop shots do you hit versus how many approach shots do you hit? There's something that Braden would always talk about. The tally, where it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tally marks, just shot by shot, and definitely keep a count of number of points. It takes a long time for a junior tennis player to actually hit an overhead. Shot tolerance, just average of how long the rallies go. So there's just so many different things you chart. Getting a stopwatch and what they do as far as the time in between points. A summary, what are the key points? I like when you chart and you actually you tag the mistakes. So say if in the first set the kid misses 18 forehands, whether it's a return, a ground stroke, approach shot, passing shot, but then just to give them the visual. And I've been told today that young people better off to see it if they can just see because they just the way content's presented to them. It's not to give them a 25-page printout. A Bradenism on charting is you chart to get the objective data on what to practice. But what comments would you have from the charting? And just because then we'll get into some thoughts on the U.S. Open.
Yeah, no, I obviously, I've charted a lot of matches, and I like the T chart, and I like how diverse it can get, and how much detail you can get down to if you want, or you can choose the stats that will be pertinent to that match. But I always try to dumb things down as much as possible, and I think if you chart it all, I think I said this in the last podcast, if you chart it all, the most amazing thing is just how little your opponent has to do with the match that you're playing. People just miss. I remember you sent me to futures tournaments before, and I must have charted 10 matches at futures tournaments, and almost all of them ended in the negatives. People just miss more than they make a ball.
Yeah.
Unforced error. You're on balance, you have time, and you just miss the ball. Pro level tennis. Most points end like that.
Vic Braden would take his index finger, fold it in half. He'd pretend he's picking his nose, and he'd wave his racket like this. His wife Melody said, "Quit doing that." But he said, "This is what you think. This is what you should think your opponent's doing. There's only one ball, and you have it. It's on your side of the court. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
Can you hit it?" And I think charting we've struggled for years with one piece of paper. What time did you get up? What time did you go to bed? Glasses of water, sugar intake. How many phone calls did you make? How many matches did you call like a junior? Did make phone calls? And did you play up a match, down a match, recording scores? But certainly charting, what does someone do with their time? When they practice, are they doing just that? Are they putting in time? Are they putting in effort? For going back with all these podcasts we have now, is people could go back and just look at or look up. We dedicated certainly 1 or 2 episodes to Bill Jacobson, who founded CompuTennis. First, he's considered the electronical pioneer. Brought the charting into the computer age into tennis charting.
Yeah. No, I think there's charting and then there's data, and it's just making sure you're getting the right data. I always go back to people that are such a fan of the inside out forehand. I think it's one of those overrated shots in tennis.
So the only shot in tennis.
Well, it's just overtrained. You have if I even see a coach hand tossing a ball more to the center and a little shorter, and the guy's practicing running around it, hitting it forehand, I'm like, oh, that's okay, I'll take it. But you see guys like they're throwing it into the backhand corner, and these guys like work harder to get around that ball, and then they've trained that so hard, and it just develops these instincts of I'm not hitting my backhand. And people go, oh, well, yeah, but look at Djokovic. He hit so many more forehands than backhands in this Australian Open. And I went and I counted every ground stroke. I don't know what it was with the stats of that Australian Open, but you could count the total ground strokes that they hit, forehands or backhands. And Djokovic hit 92 more backhands than his opponents in the tournament. So every match he had like 15, 20 more backhands than his opponent. And although he did hit more forehand winners and backhands, basically to me, it was just he was being more picky on the ball that he did hit a forehand on. Like, so he'd still come around his backhand. But when he did it, it had a purpose. It was really hurting so it was for him, it was, do I have to hit a backhand? Okay, this can be a forehand, where everyone else is like, can I hit a forehand? No, fine, I'll hit a backhand. And you've said it before too, you can actually see players react with their footwork, where they first look for the forehand and then end up hitting an off-balance backhand rather than
their
first look for the backhand.
Their first initial response is they want a forehand. They start to pivot their body that way.
Yeah.
The term inside out used to be a technical term. Used to mean to swing from close to away from your body. Even when you hit a traditional, conventional, routine cross-court forehand, if you're going to hit topspin, you're swinging inside out. You're swinging away from your body. If you're swinging outside in, you can hit some side spin. But now it becomes a tactical term. Years ago, I agree with you, it's overtrained, but it's also overplayed. But we would do a drill where we say, okay, you can only hit forehands. But now that's all people do anyway. So I haven't done that drill in a long time.
Yeah.
And you can run around your forehand, but we're telling kids all the time, well, you think people think that we're saying, no, never run around a backhand. But we break the red zone, the backcourt, into three areas, and kids are running around their backhand in the defensive, way behind the baseline, in neutral area, on the baseline, but inside the baseline. Plus, I think it's really wrong for these junior tennis players to be copying the pros. First, learn to dribble basketball, learn to do all the John Wooden principles before you're going to be Michael Jordan.
Yeah, on that note too, it's again, I love working with beginners, young tots, adult beginners. And I feel like anyone who thinks they need to teach an inside-out forehand hasn't worked with a beginner, because none of them want to hit their backhand. They'll do whatever they have to not to hit a backhand. I mean, people intuitively try to run around their backhand. So why would we even encourage it? And if anything, I got to do extra backhands. I have to make them start points with backhands. Like, no, hit the backhand. And then what happens is they learn to instinctually hit the backhand. And then, if they have time, hit the forehand, which, the ball that you should be running around and hitting a forehand on is the ball that you have time to think, hey, I should run around this. So it's almost like backwards,
Well, being competitive, I've said for years and years now that I wish they had tournaments for teaching beginners. Let's just go with 10 8-year-olds, and you get an hour. You have to teach them to serve. Film them at the beginning, film them at the end.
Bring it.
And that would be fun. I do realize that, the players, I should say former players here will get around the US Open, like a Darren Cahill was a world-class player, and certainly Brad Gilbert was 4 in the world. And I love listening to those guys. But that's just not something that they do. Taking on 10 8-year-olds on how to serve with, but that's not a competition. And I think that it's great that that's what you love to do. I think most people don't want to have anything to do with beginners. It's like, no, I don't teach beginners. That'd be like saying I'm a reading teacher, but I only work with fast readers. I can't work with those slow readers.
No, I think it's the most underappreciated job. I see, tennis coaches that really try hard at taught tennis, they come off this court and they're just exhausted. I think they're underpaid and underappreciated, because it's like keeping a kid's attention, these little kids' attention, and then trying to also give them information, try to get them to focus. Coaching, that's a hard job.
Well, many times what happens is it's the blind leading the blind. You go to some tennis clubs across our country, or US of A, and it's the most inexperienced teachers are with the most inexperienced players.
Sure.
Yeah, so charting, U.S. Open, what do they do in between points? What do they do with their rituals? There's so many things to make a study, to log. But what are some thoughts? Where do you want to begin with the U.S. Open?
I don't know. I just go back to what you said. I think it was a Vic thing. We talk, that guy, Vic Braden?
I've heard of Vic, yeah. The late Vic Braden.
What did he say about the higher the level, the smaller the thing, or something like that?
Yeah, as far as the strategy goes, the higher the level of play, the less sophisticated the tactics are. Maybe three things at the most likely two.
Yeah.
Because as you go up, the expression is there's no holes in their game. Like again, Roddick, great American player, great player. Boy, you hear his name all the time when the majors come around. It's been 21 years now since an American has won a major. And again, Roddick's in the International Tennis Hall of Fame. Great player, but I've always said his game was like Swiss cheese, lots of holes in it. Where Roger Federer was American cheese, no holes. But Roddick, he said about Federer, he's an artist, he's a technician. I just scrap out of the ball. But yeah, where do you want to start? Just throw something at me, and I've got some thoughts here as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, if there's no big things, and to see a player like Sinner, I think it's safe to say he somewhat dominated that match.
Okay, let's go to the final. Sinner versus Taylor Fritz.
That
No
was
problem.
the one that I spent the most time watching, and then it has to be a totality of multiple small things in order for him to, do that well against a player who's now 6th in the world. So I think, starting with movement, I think it's funny, interesting young boy here, Ethan, you asked him, how he thought skiing might help Sinner. And he said balance, coordination. And I think, speed, getting in and out of corners, controlling your center of gravity, how much does it tilt to the outside? The faster you are, the quicker you get to the ball. But, when you get to the ball, the slower you can move into it. And the slower you can move into the ball, the more sure-footed you can become, the more control of your center of gravity you have to get back. So obviously Sinner's a great mover on the court. And I think that had a part to do with it. He's just in position more, and Fritz is just given more, hitting shots by not being in great position, which is shorter errors.
Well, Fritz is big time. From the age of 18, he certainly is, been in the public eye. And for those of us in junior tennis, we saw him long before the age of 18. He's got, and both guys, big guys. I think they're both 6'5". I think they're standing side by side. It looks like they're exactly the same height. So I know Matt Clore, who we've spent so much time working with, he spent a lot of time around Taylor Fritz. I know he's traveled with him, even if it was just a couple of weeks. But he's at the National Tennis Center. He's just been around him. He said he's most competitive guy. He says next to Coco Gauff, he thinks she's number one, he's number two as far as who's the most competitive tennis player in the U.S. But coming back to Guy Fritz, I met Harry Fritz years ago. He was a tennis pro at the Richmond Hill Country Club in Toronto. And not that I got to know him very well, but later he actually was the story. Harry Fritz hired one of my former students, Richard Hernandez. You've probably met Richard many times. And Richard was out because of the way he was teaching. Then the members, they got together and Richard was back in. But I know all these years later, they still communicate. There was a little problem with Harry didn't really understand where Richard was coming from as a young tennis teacher. But going back to the volley, I always, when I start talking about pros, we should sit in section F and just buy a hot dog, get some popcorn. But Raven Clausen, who you spent years with, came to us when he was, he's finishing juniors. He's 18 years old and pretty much went back to the drawing board on everything. And he played world team tennis with Taylor Fritz, a young Taylor Fritz. Maybe if Taylor Fritz was 18, 19. Because at one point they were using young juniors. I think they still do that. They didn't do that years and years ago, but the Fritz family, Kathy May's mother, top 10 in the world, they offered Raven a job to teach him how to volley. And Richard recently ran into Harry at a conference where the information on how to resurface courts, and I guess I know Richard is for sure in that business. And they started talking about Taylor's game, and next thing you know, Richard got in the car and they went and they met with Guy Fritz. And Matt Clore told me one time that Taylor's just so stubborn. He goes, "Yeah, I can't volley, but I'll hit the ball down your throat anyway." But how many points? He won 45% of the points.
Yeah, 45.1.
So, what we do a lot of times is, okay, let's just put the number of points won and lost on the board. And if you get one more point back, so say it wasn't 45%, but he won 45 out of 100 points, which is 45%. So Taylor could go up to 46. And then that means center goes down to 54. He goes up to 47. And you just put that on the board with the idea that you're going to get juniors to fight for every point. But I know that just having read about Taylor Fritz, that he was a little late to work with juniors. I think he was 12 years old. He went to a USTA camp and he realized he was behind. And he went home and said, "Hey, if I'm going to really be good in tennis, I just need to specialize." But up to that point, he had played other sports. And I understand that he played, peewee football, tackle football. And I have my opinions. I think every boy in America should play tackle football. You can just learn so much from a collision sport. But, I think also to not only the snow skiing, but banging the ball on a hard court versus, Yannick Sinner growing up on clay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I said, I came up on hard true and at the Carrollwood and then HEC, we played on the hard true there a lot. And I've gone, periods of 5-6 years without stepping on a clay court. But when I do step on it, it just feels like home. I just have that memory of how to slide and how to play. And obviously, yeah, I think what you're getting at, the shot tolerance points of just like keeping more balls in play on clay,
No, you see these players sliding on hard court, but they're just great movers.
That's true. And to Taylor Fritz's credit, I think everyone agrees he's improved his fitness and movement a ton, But it's just, Sinner obviously had the edge in that category.
But times to the net, that's one thing that the players don't realize how successful they are at the net. I always think of Federer. First time he played Nadal at the French, I believe he came in 17% of the time and won 73% of the points. The hockey guy, Wayne Gretzky, not too long ago said stats are for losers. So, you can overlook at numbers, but if you just read what the player has to say and the history of the player unfolds, Federer didn't use tennis analytics until 2017. Then it came out and said, "My dad was right. My dad said I was always chicken." So he's running around his backhand, and instead of playing an underspin backhand approach in the Nadal's Western grip on the forehand side and doing the math at the net, he's running around the backhand, banging it into Federer's forehand, into Nadal's lefty forehand. Then Djokovic comes along, he has such a great backhand. Gilbert said that Agassi's backhand was a gift from God, and it's basically a carbon copy. Yeah. If people just look at how they both are swinging at the ball.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely. Didn't have to go away. I think it's just a symptom of letting people do what they want to do, just giving them candy. Like I said, if I let any 5 or 6 year old do what they wanted to do naturally, like Vic says, brain relates to the dominant palm. No one's going to be more comfortable hitting with the back of the hand at first. Just let them do what they want. They're going to hit forehands. They're going to run around it, instinctually. So that's why I'm so big on, when kids are in really early development, when I do when I get them to start to play competitively in rallies, and you used to do this as well, start the point with the backhand, drop it a backhand and play to start the point. And just do it because they're going to try to hit 3 more forehands and backhands in that rally anyway. So at least, if you start with a backhand, at least we got you hitting 1 more backhand.
No, it's great. People don't miss it, but when Becker started a rally, you drop hit a ball and hit it off the backhand. So obviously someone taught him to do that, and that became built in. That was a ritual.
Sure.
With creative training, now there's so much money in singles, and granted the ball is coming almost twice as fast, and hard court's tough on the body. Now the Australian is on hard, the US Open's on hard. So many tournaments are on hard. A majority of indoor carpet, but I'd have to throw it out, but I think easily 60% of the tournaments pro tournaments are on hard court. When Nadal finally won his first hard court major, it was Australian, and he said, "I wouldn't have said this until I won, but I'd like to have more matches played on clay, not because I'm good on clay, but I want to be able to play soccer, be able to play football when I'm an old man."
Sure.
So I do think the creative training, doubles is not emphasized. And if people were to play doubles the right way, they could go forward more. Like, we could go through this, like how many times did either player serve and volley? That's just not a pattern. It's a go-to pattern. We talk about the women's match. Sabalenka, I believe she did it one time, and she came up. I mean, she totally flubbed it. And it's amazing, and jumping over to Sabalenka and have a serve like that and not be able to follow it in.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm definitely, I'm convinced that, first of all, I think if you go back and look stats, like you'll see Nadal sneak in a serve and volley every once in a while. I see Federer sneak in a serve and volley. They didn't used to do that. That's a recent development where they just started kind of sneaking it in every once in a while. And they were, usually it happens out of desperation. They'd be down and like, I might as well try something new, but I'm really convinced, and I use the number 30%. You said 50%, but I think you'll see a player who understands that returning against a serve and volleyer is completely different than returning against a baseliner. So if you serve and volley 30%, and they never really get a good handle on what's about to happen, having to keep it low or like I can loop this one back deep. I think you could be very successful at serve and volley still. I think you'd be successful at serve and volley if you have a good enough serve. You do it every time. But I think every player, I think a great strategy is just like do it once every 3 points, you just sneak it in.
Well, in practice, if you were to go 50-50, then find out which one you're better at. And the conditions, it's the surface changes. With Federer, and again, this has been repeated on our podcast, when he played the famous match against Sampras, he came into that more in that 5-set match than he did in 5 consecutive Wimbledons. They changed the grass. The first year it was Hewitt and Nalbandian. It was 2002, and the grass changed, and there wasn't one serve and volley point in the Wimbledon final. With what other common stats you have on the match with Fritz and center?
They're successful at the net. Fritz 13 out of 19 at the net, 68% points. At 68% of the time he came in, he won the point. Center 8 out of 13, 62%.
But it's 68%, 62%. I heard you say we watched this together. So for the most part, it's like they're not coming in unless it's a sure thing.
Exactly. Yeah. If you look at all the in-betweens, like we could have gone in on that. Could have gone in on that. I'm thinking that 68% maybe goes down to 64%, but he wins a ton more points,
We have a gal here who played the Junior US Open, and we watched it, and she, like everybody else, she didn't serve and volley. People just don't serve and volley. And she was also at the Wimbledon tournament for 14s, and I said, "Well, you've been to Europe 3 times so far this year. What I think you get from that is a sense of belonging. But look around." She came back from Wimbledon. She saw the Bryan brother playing an exhibition. And she goes, "Oh, I see what they're talking about." But then it's just that Billie Jean King, at one time, she had a company. The name of the company was just Go For It. But if you don't serve and volley, you don't serve and volley. Granted, you have to have a serve and a volley, but you're not developing instincts at the net. And there was a couple key points for Fritz. He had chances to win that 3rd set. He was serving 5-3. got broke at 5-4, was leveled to 5-all. And he serves. I mean, I heard an interview with him, and one of his serves was 133 miles an hour. And center, he brought it back with authority.
Yeah. No, he's got a good serve. That was his big opportunity to get that set, get the crowd, get a little pumped up, get some momentum.
My son Connor played Fritz in practice. Andy Fitzell was with him, and Connor was on grass in England. Connor grass shoes had worn out, and he said, "Gee, I don't need more shoes for grass." Fritz said, "What size you wear?" They were the same size. So I'll give you a pair. I'm not sure if the shoes actually had Fritz's name on them, but Connor, it was just Andy could tell you. I think it was just a practice set, but Connor wins the practice set. He goes, but after he had his own shoes, I felt like I lost. And then a couple of years later, even within the same year, I don't remember what it was, but he did play Fritz and lost to Fritz. He starts a point so well. He returns. It's amazing how well he returns on the forehand side with the grip he has.
Yeah, he's just super relaxed and redirects really well.
Short, compact.
Yeah.
Both sides.
Yeah, I think more people need to process the fact that you have a 125 mile an hour ball coming in to work with. You don't have to do it all on your own.
Well, tennis history, I consider myself an old guy now that I'm an amateur historian. Tony Roach, he told Lendl, he goes, your problem is your ego's too big and you're too greedy. You want to keep making as much money as possible and you want to stay number one. Now, he skipped the French Open, and I think it was 87 where he lost to Pat Cash, and one spectator held up a sign, and Lendl being from Czechoslovakia, the former Czechoslovakia. And the poster said, I'd rather have Cash than a Czech. So they're obviously cheering for the Aussie. And Pat Cash would get so low, and he was just, Braden doesn't like the word natural, but he did it so many times. It was natural to him. It didn't, obviously he didn't just all of a sudden become a serve and volley player. But what Tony Roach said is, you won everything. You should just play every tournament, every match, day in and day out, like you want to win Wimbledon. Yeah, serve and go. Lendl was told by Jacobson, because he was curious, that even his own numbers indicated that when he went into the net, he was successful. But he was wired to break people's legs. In other words, I'll be fitter than anyone, and I will just, wear people down.
Yeah. No, and I think anyone who watches junior player development these days, I don't think anyone can say, oh yeah, we do teach them to go in. We do try to build those instincts. It's just this, the technology doesn't allow them to go in anymore. That's not true. No one's being taught to go in. They're being taught to be the best 9-10-year-old in the country. But, even advanced players, and I was talking to a student about this today, even players, high-level players that haven't done it, watching them initially try to do it, you really need to learn to approach. Like, okay, I'll try. So they'll approach, start running in, and their opponent's striking the ball, and they'll just be mid-stride, watching the ball go by them. Like, they don't even know how to time organize the feet for when their opponent strikes. They can't read a lob. Advanced players, they're not as bad as a beginner, but it's just funny watching a fish out of water like that, and watching them actually improve as they try to do it over time. They're like, oh wait, I got to change directions when he's about to strike that. I got to get my feet set. I got to learn to half volley. I got to learn to hit low volleys, high volleys. And I just think if you can do that when you're younger, imagine how good at that skill that you can get to where it didn't need to disappear like it did in the game.
College tennis. I tell parents, and as you know, that's been my line of work, is training goal-oriented juniors. College tennis is the goal. Pro tennis is the dream, and therefore training the parents and coaches that are in that segment of tennis. And again, really good people, but tennis parents and juniors, they need to realize that a college coach will get a player and go, this player's going to play 6 for me. I'm not changing anything. And they're going to play 6. They're going to have a high GPA. They're going to graduate with a degree in accounting, never even thinking about playing doubles. Some of the best players in the world, like say Roddick, a top American, they weren't, of course, the Bryan brothers are on hand. And it did take the USTA and the powers to be. It took too long to put the Bryan brothers in. I can remember some of the teams they used before they actually gave the Bryans their shot. But such positive characters, they hung in there. Side note, they should be in the Hall of Fame this next time around. But with college players, and I should say college coaches, it's not like, okay, we're going to take this player at number 6 and we're going to make him a number 1.
Yeah.
And so they get labeled. If there's many, many juniors that are successful in the U.S., and let's face it, it was over 60% 2 years ago for the women, 62% for the men, foreign players, that it's very tough to play high level Division I tennis. But the young kids that are very successful in the 10s, I mean, I've been at this a long time. We had Mark Bay on. He said a tennis generation is 12s, 14s, 16s, and 18s. So 6-year period. So I've seen quite a few generations. And a kid goes into college and they're typecast. They're a grinder. They're a counterattacker. They're a defensive specialist. They're a pusher, whatever that title may be, because they played not only 10 years of singles staying back, but they played 10 years, age 8 to 18, where they didn't go to the net in doubles. So it's a crisis.
Sure. No, I've heard you say multiple times, if you have 2 kids, assuming a good college coach is looking at them, if you have 2 kids, same GPA, same ranking, same, just both good kids. One kid's on a full Western, one-dimensional game, stays 8 feet behind the baseline. The other kid is an all-quarter, can play singles, doubles. Even if you just see his game is more diverse, the college coach is going to take the kid that can help him win a singles and a doubles point. So I think that's a huge advantage in recruiting as well. And obviously, we say all the time, college is pro's the dream, college is the goal.
I do think not enough where college coaches are actually looking at the technical base. What are they inheriting? They're just looking at the UTR.
Yeah.
And certainly, I remember a coach who was not too well informed, and he used to just say, either you're a winner or not. People do need to learn to win at one point. But Chris Sierra said it to Djokovic. Don't you ever think about just going up the net a little bit? You're cruising through some of these early round matches, and he has improved a great deal going forward.
Yeah. Well, I think that says a lot when you see some of these, retired players look at these current guys, and I mean, they're there live. They're watching the speed of the ball. They're watching the game, and they're not saying, "Oh, the ball's going too fast now to go to the net." They're saying, "Why aren't any of these guys going to the net?" I think that's a testament to the fact that maybe something might be a little up in tennis.
I think about going to the net. It's, we're watching the Olympics and these gals doing a backflip on a balance beam. It's not that dangerous to go to the net.
Yeah.
I tease the Indian population in America. You're not signing your kid up for anything where you have to wear a helmet. Something bad could happen. Yeah. Kid I grew up with, I believe John Posey, I believe it was his father, Sam. He wrote once some memories, and I think one was for Wild World of Sports. I'm going to guess that Sam wrote The Thrill of Victory and the Agony of Defeat. And when they showed the intro for this TV show, Wild World of Sports, they showed someone falling off a ski lift, or a ski jump, I should say. But I grew up with a kid, Barney Hagan. We were in Lake Placid. He goes, "Yeah, I think we'll go try that." Because usually it'd be the Pee Wee game, and then the Bantams had to wait. 2 teams would travel together. And somehow he got up to the top of that ski lift in Lake Placid and borrowed some skis, borrowed some ski boots, and he went down for the first time. That's somebody I think that person will venture to the net. Net phobia. I mean, it's not a rattlesnake. It's not going to bite you.
Yeah, one more thing on that note, and it's just a theory I have, but, Sampras was a pretty low-key conservative guy. He wasn't very flashy. But if you do a YouTube search, Sampras jump smash, it's a very fun YouTube search. You just see him serving, opponent floats the return, and he's just sprinting towards the ball and jumping in the air about 4 or 5 feet and just smashing it down. And he enjoyed basketball as well, but to me, that wasn't him trying to show off. That was his instincts, and his intuition was so fast, and he was so quick to move forward and just attack, that I think that shot that he basically patented, that you still to this day don't. I mean, you see people do it sometimes going backwards. Sampras was doing it going forwards. The guy was floating the ball and he's like running forward to the net, jumping in the air and taking a jump smash in. And I think obviously we've seen footage of Sampras just as tall as the net, approach, volley, overhead, just working on that for those forward instincts. And I'm curious if I think if you talk to Sampras, he was like, yeah, I was trying to show off, do a jump smash. I think that's something he came up with. Like, I want to go get that ball as soon as I can.
Well, everybody has a copy of it now, but at one point, I was in this college setting where we were offering a college degree and had lab assistants. And remember, Tom Gilly had to do it for a while. But one person would do it, the next person would do it. Anytime tennis was on, you had to have a VCR. We had to film it. I remember losing some film at Tim Henman. That young guy, he was in like a squash court. And he had like foam balls. And he was just such a little kid hitting great volleys when he was so young. Remember Stuart Doyle, who Matt spent some time with. He was not a kid anymore, but for an Irish kid to beat an English kid like Henman in the 12s, and many years later, Stuart Doyle coached for Illinois. So he shows up and he's going to go to. You might have been there. It was in Tampa. He's going to take his kids to Disney World in Orlando. And he came by and replayed. I knew he was coming, but he said, could you make one of those videos for me? I want to find out why it wasn't that good. And, he didn't go forward. He was just a rugby player with a racket. And, but, looking at film, the film that we have of Sampras, where he comes in, he's just tagging a two-handed backhand volley. Listeners, you have a better chance to learn how to hit a one-handed volley by hitting a two-handed backhand volley. So this is what kids do. And I've had this battle with so many kids. Well, first of all, the problem is they don't volley. But then if they do volley, they come in and they run around their backhand volley. Just today, they tell kids all the time, they're warming up and they're not even dividing the court in half. They slide over. We see kids play doubles all the time, ball comes right at them. They don't play a backhand volley. So again, that word instincts. One of the best things to do is just put a kid right up against the fence and just pepper him with balls. I always tell people it's not a lacrosse ball; it doesn't hurt. You get hit by a tennis ball. You see it all the time. But one of the reasons people don't go to that is they're afraid of it. But if you don't go, you don't go. But on the flip side of it, even with center, is creative training. With I can tell you one thing about John McEnroe is when he played matches, one of the reasons he went forward, and he grew up Douglastown, he grew up on clay, and he'll tell you that he was more of a baseliner. But then it was just, well, if you want to play pro tennis, it's like Jack Kramer said, his father said to him when he was #1 junior in America, he goes, well, now you got to play with the men. You got to go forward. But McEnroe, Kevin Record was a guest on our podcast, great guy, high school coach. People should go back and listen to Kevin Record if they haven't heard it. So Record's friend was playing McEnroe at Kalamazoo, and it was McEnroe was playing backgammon, and he wanted to quickly go back and play backgammon. So we go out. He goes out on the court, and he's very rude. He's going, "Hey, let's not warm up. Let's just play. Let's just start. We don't need to warm up." Because the kid wanted to warm up. So McEnroe beats him 0-0. He goes, "I told you didn't need to warm up." And then he goes back, plays backgammon. But if you want to get off the court in a hurry, say you're up by 2 or more points, with some of the coaches we've trained over the years, go play a tournament when you're really young. Serve volley the entire time. It's like Vic Braden would tell you in doubles. Hey, why don't you just play practice set and poach on every ball? Just go and make it adventurous.
Yeah, no, if you're 44 or over and you're just getting back into the game, and you got to have those skills, because I tried to stay back like 3 points and I couldn't breathe anymore. So I was like, wait a second, I can end this quick. But no, to go on to creative games and getting kids into it. I always hoped when I first saw the smaller court and the low compression balls for the kids, my first thought was, that makes so much sense. Kids can go to the net now and have success. That's why they've designed this, so the kids could play all court tennis at a young age. And then I saw what they were doing. I was like, no, that's not at all why they did that.
Even when you change the scoring, if you go to the net, you win. You get 3 points, and if you're at the net and lose, it's a -1 or +3. And you have people playing that you don't even you're not keeping score. You just play Let's play 10 points for the sake of simple math. You serve 5, I serve 5. So on the fifth serve, you spin on where this is going to be, or it doesn't do the server's choice, returner's choice, whatever. And just keep your score. So if you're at the baseline, you win the point, you get a +1. You're at the baseline, you lose, it's a -3. In the middle of the court, you can go +2, -2. And even then, people just don't go. They don't go because they don't go, number one. But also, too, is that they have poor volley mechanics.
Exactly.
They've been taught to have a continental grip, which opens the racket face at a 45-degree angle. The top players don't say what they do or they do what they say. We always say with Jose Garris, and we know it's repetitive, but he was the voice of American tennis for a while as the lead coach for the USTA. The forehand volley is almost a continental grip. You spent some time with Dave Squire. He had a tough time. Great guy, because he's an Aussie. No, you value the continental grip. You're not a composite grip. I said, well, let me go back and tell you, they used to call it the Australian grip. Oh, okay, I'll use the Australian grip. Great. You go have a beer with Squire, he's going to tell you, I'm from the greatest tennis nation in the world. And sure enough, I think what was done in the 50s and 60s, the Australians, if you look at that, well, they played on grass, but everybody's playing school tennis. So many people are playing tennis. You play doubles. And, we've said it forever on this podcast that if tennis coaches, 20 minutes would be nice. 20 minutes of every practice, we're going to play one bounce doubles. I like to play one bounce doubles, no poaching initially. So the return has to go cross court. The player has to volley. I don't like to have beginning players. I've said it before. I don't like to have beginning players play the I formation. Men's Division III college tennis is pretty much all that. I or modified I, someone banging a serve and the person up, that's the cleanup person. And granted, it's college and they're trying to win, but you need to develop the player. Dave Anderson's been a guest on this podcast many times. He says about college tennis, well, they didn't get worse because a lot of times people will lose their technical base if they're not doing their routines over and over again. Coming back to competitive tennis, you and I think of Uncle Vic. I work with toads. We're not recruiting. It's not very nice to say that. Well, I teach toads, but Louis Caillet, who was in Canada, French Canadian for a long time, he had the action method, and I trained a lot of Canadian coaches and Canadian players, and years later, he's been with the LTA, the British Tennis Association or Federation, for a long time. And he does say that in his presentations. We have to realize I'm working with world-class players. But I would like my chances to say, okay, I'm going to take on if I could take some of the recruits that some of these college coaches have and go, yeah, I get to work with these players for 4 years.
Yeah, sure. It's
like Bum Phillips said about Don Shula, one of the best football coaches ever, one football coach, Bum Phillips, saying about the other Don Shula. He said it with his countrified accent, he'll take his and beat yours, and then he'd take yours and beat his. But I think that's a crisis. Coming back to doubles, though, like say the gold medal rounds. Big fan of the way Rajiv Ram plays tennis. He might have had his worst 10, 12 minutes in his career. He didn't play too well at one point in that gold medal round. Obviously a world-class tennis player. But to pick on the women with, first of all, the tactics, like say one up, one back, or even to pick on Taylor Fritz and Coco Gauff, how they played mixed. But they weren't taught at a young age the principles, the fundamentals of doubles. Let's go with brain typing on those men. What do you think?
Sinner and Fritz?
Yeah.
I think you're right on the money with ISTP. Both super cool cucumbers. I think Fritz, I'm going, gosh, obviously, it's hard to say, and you got one primary, one secondary, but I think they handled pressure really well. I think, Fritz, I don't think Fritz lost because he was feeling the pressure. I think he just got outplayed that day, but I think both the guys, you know, as far as recovering between points and just moving on and short memory and handling the pressure, I think they just did really good.
Actually, before we came on air, I was showing Jeff part of my tennis library, just the books. I have one book from 1904 that a tennis coach sent me, collector's item. The one with Matram, where you can just, it's like the penny arcade. It's 104 pages. So you can just flip it, go 1,000, 2, 1,000. And, you know, it's like Newcomb's overhead or Virginia Waite's forehand, Yvonne Goulding's backhand. But years ago, people were studying tennis. One thing with John Niednagel, and now his son Jeremy, with not knowing the players, we could be way off. But I think Joel Trucker, I mean, I asked him, he thought center was an ISTP, and he go to our website, and he's the one who, with Vic Braden, wrote the long article on brain typing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, wasn't Sampras an extrovert?
Yeah, that's my next comment, is that that's where we don't know the players, but people would guess that Connors was the extrovert and Sampras was the introvert, but it's vice versa. It's where you get your energy.
Yeah.
But I'd have one as an ISTJ and the other as an ISTP.
You think Fritz is a J?
Yeah, he got locked into a system of play. You know, in California, I know you spent time in California. One thing that was really big in California is, and this years ago, people just took private lessons. They would just practice. And they would play 21. Your feet underhand. And I'd say most places, that's the way we do it. You can't lose off the feed. You can't lose off the first ground stroke. I know Pete Sampras doesn't play that way. You just start to play right away. And you can play a lot more points because the serve and return take a lot of time. But Kathy May, top 10 in the world, court in their backyard, San Diego, or the San Diego area, you got to figure what a great lesson, you know. There's all these great players, like Lendel's mother was number 2 in Czechoslovakia, and they tied him to a net post. So he figured, okay, his mother still wanted to get better. With Yvonne, who knows Alex Mickelson, I guess he, from what Yvonne says, just hit balls all the time with his mom. But learning just to rally. You know, Jimmy Connors, he said in his book, he didn't beat his mom, Gloria, didn't take a set until he was at Kalamazoo. Doesn't say. I'd like to guess that, you know, he was good enough to be at Kalamazoo. I didn't have to wait till he was 16. He might have been there as a 14-year-old. But the Bryan brothers, they argue. They get in a conversation with mom. Oh, mom, I could beat you when I was 10. And his mom, Kathy Blake, no, we weren't 10. I one time was Stella Sampras, and I said, is it really true that Pete could beat you when he was 8 years old? She's a really quiet lady. And she looked up, no. I always say that Sampras was number 1 in the world for 6 years. But there was more than 6 years where he was number 2 in his household. His brother didn't play, but yeah, his sister, she won the NCAA title at UCLA. So, yeah, learning to rally. I think that's with Fritz, you know. I've heard Sampras say he's just going to bludgeon. He's just going to try to bang people. He lost to Massetti at Wimbledon, and he lost to him again at the Fritz lost to Massetti, then he lost to him again at the Olympics. So he lost to him on grass, then he lost to him on clay. So the matchups, Massetti's got a lot of tools, and but you know, kids going out and playing mini tennis. You know, kids don't hang around tennis courts like they used to, just play and play and play. We talk about that on the next podcast we have with you. But no, that's interesting. I do think Jays get locked in. You know, I think this system works. Braden would tell you that, like, a Stan Smith was an ISTJ. He learns out of routine. You know, you can learn serve and volley. Chris Sierra was an ISTJ, or is an ISTJ. And it's kind of like when they go to a restaurant, the P's are going to try something a little bit different, look for a little variety, and the J's are I know that well. I'm a J. I do the same thing every day, over and over again.
Yeah. That's why I'm a better athlete than you.
Physically or mentally, or both?
Take your pick.
What do you got?
No, I think, just to go back to the parenting, you know, I think it's a huge benefit having a I mean, there's got to be something said to have parents that have done it and made it to that high level tennis, not just the way they got there, but all the mistakes they probably made and are able to be like, all right, here's what you don't do. You know, you look back on, I think, a somewhat successful career, and, you know, if I wouldn't have done this, and this, you know, so you have all that, you have the grit and, you know, that information.
Oh, and the conversations they have with their contemporaries, the people they know.
Yeah.
It's like with players coming to work with me for years and years now. It all happened, don't like to mention this, but with 9/11, I used to have groups come and they would stay in a hotel, and, you know, I'm married, have 2 kids, trying to pay some bills, and have 6 months of accounts canceled. So I made some changes. The next thing you know, I have my own place where I could sleep 20 people. And then so they didn't have to come as groups. They could just come on an individual basis. So even here up in the mountains, Wintergreen, Virginia, is we have a place where we can sleep 20 players. Most of the time we have like 10 or 12. But the parents should figure out, okay, I've gone there, I've checked it out. It's safe, it's secure. I'm sending them by themselves.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be around us 24/7. I've had people tell me that, yeah, I've coached that kid for 2 years and he went to your place for 2 weeks and you know more about him than I do. You know, just, you know, whether it's being at lunch or reprimanding the kid for texting his mom and how to use a washing machine. Well, why don't you ask the person who's next to you? Don't call mom. And,
they used to have to cook for themselves. I noticed, like, now
we've done it different ways.
Yeah.
Where they keep their food. You know, we're up here in the middle of nowhere, so it's amazing when people first go to the grocery store. We have those tubs, the silver tubs, so you can see.
Yeah.
Who's got the Fruit Loops and who's got the
it's
Pop
character
Tarts?
building. It's like, what'd you get at the grocery store?
So you lay out. You get a beach towel, and they spread out. You go, okay, put your groceries on the beach towel. And the people that have been with us a long time, you know, they've got a blender and their food looks like a rainbow. When pros are at our place, you know, they're taking an ice bath. You know, they got to buy bags of ice, and they got a big jug of water, and, you know, then you'll have shown them something on their forehand, and, you know, they'll be watching a playoff game or whatever, but they'll shadow swing, you know, like for hours, not like a full game.
Yeah.
And so you just, you know, when you're with the kids, you just see where they're couch potatoes, or they're not. You say, okay, write down notes, take 10 minutes. You know, we set this room up for yoga. You can stretch on your own. There's all this carpet laid out, and they don't do it.
Yeah, no, I think that's the most important lesson. You know, obviously we've seen pros that are severely flawed fundamentally and can still make it to the top. But I think a parent who's done it can at least say, hey, look, here's the time it takes. Here's the passion it takes. Here's what you got to put in it to get this out. And if they do that, if they only do that, they're going to have some success, you know. And I think especially I've noticed a lot of parents that come from academia. They work really hard. It doesn't translate necessarily to sports because they think it's like a cognitive thing you got to figure out. Like, you got to just figure out tennis. Read this book. Why aren't you good at it? You just read this book.
Yeah, I've told many kids. I've told many parents. It's not like you're preparing for the SATs.
Yeah,
there is a formula that's similar though. If you're going to be good at, you can rock up and do well on the SATs. You know, how the building years, how well did you do in the first grade, the second grade? It all adds up. It's definitely a different thing. Being an athlete, knowing, you know, that think on your feet. Every little thing adds up. I talk to Rob Krychek all the time and spent so many years with his son. And then Sherry, mom, you know, people go back and listen to the podcast with Rob. Rob's a basketball player, played all 3 sports growing up. Sherry was a professional water skier. They're athletes. The water is cold today. I'm not going in. But she was a school nurse. And I remember one time, just, you know, he's, you know, 7 years old. I mean, you were there when he was being trained. Or he was being filmed. He went off to play the Little Mo, and he came back. I said, you know, he comes back, we'll change everything. But they got it. But for years and years, she was a school nurse. I said, hey, tell me the excuse of the week. So that was very good for Austin to hear his mother. Oh, because, you know, I'm going to go see the school nurse. You know, I've got a tummy ache. And all those little things add up. Like birthday
parties. This is one that gets me. Again, I think goals versus actions. Like if kids are honest and parents are honest, they're like, no, we just want them to maybe make their high school team and have fun, have a lifetime sport. I'm like, great. But if they come in like, oh, no, my daughter's going to play for UCLA. We have a birthday party 3 times this week. It's like, I think we need to talk.
Mackenzie McDonald, we should get him on the podcast. He spent 3 weeks with us. And his dad told him, I said, your dad should be running the USTA. You should go back and work for your dad. Let your dad be running your tennis. He goes to UCLA on a tennis scholarship. His sister goes on a gymnastics scholarship. Something's going on in that household. I mean, how's that happen? 2 different sports. UCLA is big time.
Well, that's where people would say to me, it's like, yeah, you have too much academics. We don't have time for tennis. We had to pick. I'm like, well, Harvard has a tennis team, and they're pretty darn good. And I doubt they're a bunch of dummies. So someone made it work. Someone just made it work, where they did good in school and did good at sports.
I know the name. The first name is Rosie. I don't know the last name. But I've been told, and obviously you can see his game, that he was well taught by a childhood coach. So I said, when did you start working with Rosie? Kindergarten. I said, really? How'd that go? She picked me up every day, gave me a lesson before school. She made me cry every day. She hit balls at me. And my mother used to say that about elementary school. It's too bad there's not more men in elementary school. In Russia, you're not going to go to an indoor center. I mean, you're hard pressed to go to an indoor center in Russia. And one of the courts is not totally designated to becoming an athlete. One entire court looks like a gym. I mean, like they're training for gymnastics. Now, in Russia, the sport was suppressed because it wasn't an Olympic sport. It was between 1924 and 1984 or something like that. But in Russia, they're treating young kids like it's a sport. And it's, a 6-year-old, like, there's no problem being yelled at. This is how it's done. Where here is, for the most part, it's embarrassment. I mean, it's a carnival. Okay, like Braden used to say, we're doing tap downs and taps ups, and we're walking across the court. Let's make a tennis sandwich, where the kids put a racket on top of the ball. And it's like Rick used to say, they should shut up and teach them how to hit it. It's to digress on that thought, Tommy Fye, the late Tommy Fye, what a great guy. He really became a Pied Piper, which it was anyway for the USTA and the Quick Start. Mike Carter, who saw last week or 2 weeks ago, Baylor University, came to say hello. He was the first golden boy for Quick Start. Somebody was with us for 5 years. Then Tommy Fye, they're like, who's the Quick Start Pro of the Year? And I have a film of Tommy Fye running a Quick Start clinic. And who was filming it? Vic Braden. And Vic Braden, this is great, Tommy, this is great. But then afterwards, a smile face, but you should show them how to hit it, because it wasn't, it was no technique. Yeah,
it could get turned around anytime. And again, I my expectations I'd like to think are a lot lower than yours, but just teach them the ready position. Just teach them like some core. Just teach them 2 key positions and like a basic principle of, hey, you should try to brush it.
We got to travel a little bit on the U.S. Open, but it all ties in with Wayne Bryan, his famous letter that he didn't really want anybody to see, but it went viral. And he said, yeah, I really like the 10 and under initiative, but the only problem is they're 4 years late. That's what 6-year-olds should be doing.
Yeah, sure.
Kids are 5 or 6, but by the time a kid's 10, that being said too, a lot of parents are confused. You could play with any ball. Just to flip it. I mean, we have kids all the time hit with a foam ball. I don't really like the red ball. It's okay for little kids and just teaching technique, but the orange ball, the green dot, you can rally with those. Those are great training tools.
Yeah. No, I think there's 2 sides to every story. I think also, ball striking is everything, and you want to get that as accurate of an experience of that as possible. So I think at the highest levels, I like live ball. I do. Again, this is assuming kids have fundamentals, which most of them don't, or many of them don't. But once they do, I think building that myelin and that, I think a ball, like I said, a ball coming down into your racket with heavy topspin or coming up into your racket, it's going to have a slightly different, you have to make almost a subconscious adjustment for a ball coming up into your racket. And so I think obviously building myelin and anticipation and all those things. I think you need to get into dynamic drills, but I think just to show it, to have appreciation for those slow, deliberate motions of and just to get the reps. Yeah, why not? Most people can't keep a regular ball that many times in a row. So if you have a ball that just allows them to get more reps, then great.
With Braden's favorite drill, rat-a-tat-tat, 2 players at the baseline, and you just feed the ball and you come in, you try to make each other look like a donut. People wouldn't know that about Vic. Certainly with us talking about Vic and stroke production and science. The other thing is that if your legs are crossed, 4 weak positions, your legs are crossed, racket low, legs are on the forehand side, legs are crossed, rackets up high, and you flip it 2 ways on the backhand side. If your opponent's in that position, just run forward. Just run forward. And the other thing too is you got to get the ball above the level net. Can you come in and play? Federer said, well, people are afraid of the low volley. That's true. You've got to be skilled enough to be able to play low volley. But you just, the match with Fritz, I do it all the time in practice. You could have gone on that one, but you got to hit, you got to recover the baseline. In your nervous system, you got to look like you're ready to come out of the starting blocks. You're ready to go forward. And obviously Taylor Fritz, he caught up. He went to that USA clinic at 12, thought he was behind the players, but he became obviously one of the best American juniors and then one of the best juniors in the world. And Raven Klaassen, he was still playing. And I remember telling Raven, you should have taken the job. It doesn't mean that you have to coach the guy 365 days a year. Now I wasn't in on it didn't get to the point where he was just not interested, but say, no, I'll film you. Excuse me, I'm going too fast. I'll coach you. Let's film you right now. Braden, let's film it. Let's show you. And then Raven didn't have to be his coach 24/7. One thing that happened with Raven, I don't know Brad Dancer that well, but he was the successor of Craig Tiley at Illinois. So I had a lot to do with Illinois tennis. Jennifer Roberts was there first. She came through from our program. And then Craig Tiley was there because Jennifer Roberts was there. And I was there so many years in a row for Labor Day weekend. So I found out that through the grapevine that Kevin Anderson needed a coach. And I recommended Raven. And I tried to recommend Raven for Jessica Pegula. We could talk a little bit about that match. I just went through Austin Krajicek because he's played mixed with her. And he said, well, I can understand that's not my place to call her up. And so Andy Fitzell too. At that time he would have been available. I do have that in my notes to talk about those two and a few others that were termed brain trust. But Raven was still interested in playing. But I said, no, you should have played. He should have played doubles. You should have played doubles with him. Kevin, the parents, they built a tennis court in the backyard. The guy was such a hard worker. I've been around him. I've never really even, I was introduced to him a couple of times. I've never even had a conversation with him. But I remember seeing him here or there. He's always hitting serves. But, Wimbledon final, US Open final, 6'10". And I worked with a couple people that were there when he was there. But it faded because I worked with a lot of Illinois players, back when Roberts and Tiley were there. But he didn't do it early. If you got to go early, So the people listening to this podcast, so much emphasis on winning. To us, the best 12-year-old is whoever hits the most overheads. I feel so sorry for college coaches. By the time they get players, they have no idea how to play doubles. And it's really our fault in the world that you and I've been in, the ones that are teaching the grassroots level.
Yeah, and I think just the law of averages, I think when enough people do it, you'll see the game change. And I think it doesn't take much, to look around and see what's there now and see how things might be wrong. God bless her heart, Irani. She's got so many great intangibles about her, and I wish I had her grit and her willpower, but I'm glad I don't have her serve.
Well, and then there's some famous academies that she went to when she was younger.
Yeah, I think that wasn't fixed at some point.
No, it was not fixed. she has, she's definitely capable of working at Pizza Hut. But also, I think that's another thing for the students that we teach. I've taught so many people they end up having pretty strokes, but it doesn't mean squat because they don't have the character, they don't have the fight, they don't have the fitness.
Especially in doubles, I think if the game was truly deep, if the depth was really there, I think it would be much harder for that to happen. Someone with a serve that's much of a liability to have that much success at a Grand Slam. So,
well, there's a disconnect. When the NTRP came in, the system wasn't perfect. It was a boost for social tennis. It used to be in the U.S., if you wanted to play the age groups, you had to qualify. If you want to play like 35 nationals, you just sign up. It wasn't that way before. You had to go through your section. I remember when they had a 25 nationals. I would have qualified. I didn't go, but I did qualify to go to the 25 nationals. The 25 nationals was actually, in many ways, better than an open tournament because the open tournament back in the day, you'd have to play a couple more rounds and the levels weren't very high. But it was just mainly, teaching pros, former college players. So many good things have gone away, but you would play doubles. For me, say in ice hockey, the puck goes in the corner. You want to get there first so you can advance the puck. But what's going to happen is a car wreck. You get there first, you're going to be checked. Coaches are saying, finish your check. You'll break them down physically by the third period. But to me, not going to the net, it's not like going in the corner for a puck. It's just like, there's a fumble in football and you're not going to jump on it. Like we said about Andy Roddick the other day is you remember him diving on hard courts and, but he wasn't taught how to hang onto the racket really well when he was a kid. And then, that whole thing serve plus one, the racket's changed and I'll just slap a forehand and clones taught by clowns. Everybody's playing the same. And, so many things. What else you have? Stats on that match of the men?
We got, let's see, we have Sinner at a +2, Taylor at a -5.
Throughout the whole match?
Yeah.
Wow.
But it switched wildly from set to set.
Service percentage switched wildly too.
Yeah. I think Taylor Fritz had like a 30% first serve.
38% maybe first set?
Yeah, in the first set.
It fluctuated, but
then
it wasn't good.
In the end, he ended up with like slightly higher first serve percentage than
Sinner.
Because Sinner, that third set that he almost lost, he had a really bad first serve percentage. But it just goes to show you can't really just have a 30% or 38% and then an 80%. That's not exactly ideal distribution of your first serve percentage, But I think the plus minus, you finish in the minus. Obviously, talk about the little things, few too many unforced errors, probably mostly off the backhand side or just getting stretched, a little bit too much.
With the return of serve, I don't think it's the rackets. I don't think it's the strings because you can actually go to what speed was the serve hit at? What was a Roscoe Tanner serving at? I think 79 gets the Wimbledon final playing Borg. What was the speed of his serve? And it wasn't that much slower than was, players are reaching today. But my point is that you could return serve closer than that. Like say Sabalenka and Pegula, she was out of it, but the great thing is she fought, she hung in there. She was out of the first set. She hung in there, especially the second set. But like Braden used to say that, the return of serve, make it like an approach shot. You got to create forward momentum. Just turn on that forehand side, get the elbow raised, get the racket like a wall. Every time Vic corrected me, we were teaching in Colorado, and I said to these group of adult players, wait, just block the ball. He said, Steve, don't ever say that. You counter speed with speed. Because actually, if you just leave the racket in one position, the ball comes in, it's going to go down at the same angle it comes in at. Like when people get close to the net and they hit the ball in the net because they get a little bit tight, they get real tight, they get the elbow and they can't go forward. But I just think that, like Monica Seles, who didn't have the best technique, but her father served 2 baskets a day. That's 500 balls from the service line right at her. And Vic said that his research, I don't know if it would still stand now, but no one took the ball earlier than her. But she really practiced the return serve. And people like a Jimmy Connors off a wooden surface hit against the wall all winter long. And he didn't have the grip on 3. People say, Jimmy was continental. No, he was closer to 4 than he was 2.
Yeah.
But the racket face was facing off to the side. The grip determines the angle of the racket face. But Connor just pulled it in. But it comes down to repetition. The brain is, you do something over and over and over again. And hey, if you don't volley, you don't volley.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's a pretty simple equation. It's like you see guys where the racket face is really open and they're swinging down steep and they're removing pace from the serve and it floats back and then they lose complete control. And then you see guys where the racket face isn't as open. It's coming more from behind the ball. They're redirecting the pace. Takes less time, shorter swing. Ball's going back, with a little bit of pace and depth. They're not floating it. And I think that's just something that's taught, People just like to chip returns back. They're so quick to hit a slice return back if they're stretched at all, rather than saying, I'm going to get over this ball. I'm going to get these strings square and get this back. But two, if you did have to, redirect back, I call the block too, I guess, but I'm so against slicing and chipping the return. To me, the block is kind of, I guess.
Well, I think from a teaching standpoint, you can use that phrase, and then you get people, at least they square the racket face out.
Yeah.
And then can they, photos of Connors where his body, that guy did so well with his serve. His serve was he was a lefty and he moved it around, but we talked about how Braden and Ariel helped him out with the speed of his serve later in his career. He came back and he won Wimbledon in 82. He won in 74. But, again, if they don't do it when they're young, you can see the level of their play go down. You can just see when Fritz comes in, he's just unsure of himself.
Yeah, you can spot the hesitation,
Yeah.
We saw him a couple of times in that match, just get stuck in like no man's land and then just start sprinting back for the base.
In the early rounds especially.
Yeah.
When he played Zverev, right? Sometimes it was like he's at the service line, he backpedals.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's waving his arms. And, a great player, but,
much improved. He's improved a ton.
But for people, if they're listening to our podcast from an educational standpoint, is your kid going to be 6'5"? Is your kid going to grow up in Southern California? Is your kid's mom top 10 in the world? The dad's a teaching pro who had to play sports to come, had to play football to get tough. There's so many things done. To get to that stage, like hats off.
Yeah. But even then, Fritz, I think we said it, even if he did even if he didn't have that little bit of roll on his backhand and he cleaned up his backhand volley a little bit, Sinner's still going to be a better mover than him. Sinner still would have had the edge in that match. So if he did have the ability to go forward, that could have been the difference.
Yeah, well, you got to go to Braden Tennis for the future, where it's a number of steps. If he's closing in, he's serving 120 plus, and if he's closing in, doesn't matter if Sinner's faster.
Yeah, because
if you're closing in and Vic's got it written down approximately 8 to 11 steps. You're just, if you come in and you angle the ball, the guy's not going to get it.
Yeah, no,
he could be a speedster. And Sinner is good, but he's not Alcaraz. He's fast, but he's not as fast as Alcaraz.
Yeah. No, I'll do lessons with players, intermediate beginners, and they can rally a ball with me, and I'll start playing points with them from the base, and I'll say, you could beat me right now, and they'll be like, no, I can't. I'll be like, listen, the only rule is I'm not allowed to hit a winner on you. Now, you can beat me. There's a way to beat me. And I'll start playing points with them, and they'll start kind of trying to hit it away from me, and I'll just start running, getting it back. And at one point, they'll accidentally end up at the net, and they'll just put their racket out, and the ball just dribbles over to the left, and I can't get it. I'm just not that fast. And I told him, that's how you can beat me. With the one stipulation that I can't hit winners. Even if you're at the net, I got to hit it to you. I don't care how fast I am. If you just put your racket up, my foot speed can't match that ball speed, or that ball proximity.
Well, I'll follow up with Joey Johnson. I know you watched a match with Spencer Johnson the other day, and he was here this summer, a young kid who's playing at UCLA. It's a great story. If people just listen to our podcast for the first time, He went on a mission for 2 years, basically didn't hit balls. You could do some push-ups and do some shadow swinging. He did have a portable backboard that he could use at times. But Johnson, people didn't think he was going to make the lineup, but he made the lineup, climbed as high as 2 in the lineup, and he was a freshman of the year. He still got lots and lots of things to improve upon. But one thing that helped him is I said, you're like a quarterback who can't throw the ball. I remember him saying that made sense. I'd like to be able to give credit where credit's due, where I heard that for the first time. But the Air Force, Raven Clausen's called me up talking about he's coaching Lloyd Harris. Lloyd Harris is playing Alcaraz. He's playing the number one player at that time, Alcaraz, on the largest stage in tennis, the biggest stadium. An Agassi line, engage weapon number 1. You have no second serve. You're going to play him 10 times. Las Vegas is not betting on you to win any, but you could win one. That's why they play the matches.
That's right.
But Raven's going, well, he's not listening to me. Of course, he doesn't volley like Klaassen, but it doesn't matter. The late Dave Schneider of the University of Texas said about one of our players, someone that we didn't coach as a kid, but Scott Stewart, we worked with him. And what a fighter Stewart was. If he could have been coached when he was younger on how to hit the ball. He was coached on character, big time by his parents. Dad was a cross-country coach. I remember Dave Schneider said, can he go to the net, just poke one volley? Just poke one volley. I mean, if singles or doubles, you can make one volley. You just do the math. The geometry of the court, 130 degrees, 3 feet from the net, approximately. And then the old thing, win 2 out of 3. You don't have to win 2 out of 3. You could do a little worse than that, still do well. Anything else on that match? We talk a little bit about the women, then move on.
Yeah, I think we're good. Let's maybe Pegula Sabalenka.
The serve, Sabalenka's serve.
Yeah, you hope it goes away, which obviously it does sometimes. But she
doesn't go away for her not trying to hit big.
Yeah,
she'll give you some double faults. She'll give you some freebies, but
her toss is high. She fixes it in the end, but there's so many.
Yeah, and the Canadian, I should know his name. I read a couple articles, saw a few video clips. Should know his name, McFarlane.
I know who you're talking about. I've seen the same clips. He talks about changing her serve.
And he played college tennis without information, and he's working with athletes in all sports. He definitely helped her, right? She needs more help, as good as she is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, is that would the player listen to you? Because if they don't, for someone to change strokes, especially if they're at that level, they got to be 100% all in. 2 types of players, 1 or 2. You're all in. Are you all in on what we're telling you to do? And in other sports, people are all in because if not, you're going to sit on the bench. The bench and the brain. The tennis coaches, college coaches, they're not, well, my number 6 player, I don't really like his attitude. I don't like his tactics. Not playing him. No, if he's my number 6 player, most college coaches would play the number 6 player. They're governed too much by the scoreboard. And, it's really interesting, how many college coaches are really producing pro players.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah.
Good point. 4 years is enough time. If you have a system and you have a system, I think Tylee proved that, where he at least had something going on where he was like, I think with Tylee, he knew that obviously if you know what he knows, you can recruit a lot better and a lot more educated. But I think you said at the beginning, he didn't have the recruiting ability.
Well, you're headed to Houston. Tylee was first at Illinois. They had in Texas, and he spent 7 years in Texas. So he had connections. Jamison Hawthorne. He was ranked 1 in the 2nd division. It was super champs, and regular. I didn't like that. You super? Yeah, I'm super. Do you soup up? And one time I had a parent say to me after their daughter moved up to super champs, what are you going to do now? I said, what do you mean? Well, how are you going to coach her now? She's in super champs. And I said, do you have a pencil and paper? And She said, no. I said, well, I'll go get one. Why do you need pencil paper? I said, we'll write that down. That's one of the 10 dumbest things I've ever heard. You say things with a smile on your face, but I know I've always said Tylee, what he did, and we have it on film. I heard him say in an interview, we didn't work on weaknesses. I said, Greg, you on the sauce? We have it on film what you did with your players. And, so with, he had players like Ryler DeHart, Graydon Oliver, people like I think Graydon was maybe his first All-American, Ryler was his last All-American. So yeah, we had a connection there.
Yeah, but I think on your point where it is surprising that you don't see more players, coming out of college stronger, a lot stronger than when they went in, and like I said, 4 years, took a year with a kid, bring them in, take care of those fundamentals, give them a better understanding of the game. Next 3 years should just be a huge growth experience for them.
Well, we're on the discussion on serve and volley. Max Cressy, might have it wrong, but he's going to bet his mother's American volleyball player, his father is French, and he had a choice to go with the USTA or go with the French Tennis Federation. So this is pre-COVID. Matt Clore sets it up where Andy Fitzell works as a traveling coach. He's paid by the USTA to work with Max Cressy. Cressy works with Clore. He comes to our place for a short visit. And Matt and Andy weren't available to travel, but I said, hey, a young guy, Raleigh Grossman, he's a coach at the University of Idaho now. I said, okay, this guy will do it. And Raleigh, to his credit, it's like, okay, he's kind of a horse that you have to hold back. Wait a minute, kid, you're young. But this is what you're going to do. And this is going to be the mothership. And you're going to chart, you're going to send film. These are the routines he's going to do every day before and after practice. And, he's fallen down the charts again. He zoomed up to 38, but it was a novelty. It's like, this guy's the only guy in the world serving volley.
Yeah. And,
he's certainly going to improve his serve, 6'6", great work ethic, but volleying technique could be better.
Yeah.
But you got to live it. You can't, that's where you can't jump from one coach to the next. How's it go? One bad coach is better than 10 different coaches, to work on the same thing. What's that racket head doing at the hit? But the women's match, Sabalenka is taking, major cuts at the ball. I don't like when people say that because I think of baseball, it takes a big cut. Well, baseball is more of a horizontal swing.
Yeah.
She's taking big lifts. Like say on the backhand, she's sometimes changing direction at the wrong time. But overall, if you look at the backhand side, she herself, though, said after last year when she played golf that she needed to work so much on her volleys. And she's very self-critical. It was so embarrassing. I played so bad from the service line in. I'd love to listen to those type of interviews, not the courtside interview, those that are so short. But she's a raw player.
Yeah.
She's not refined. And people, what do you mean? She's unbelievable. From the service line in, she's not a refined tennis player. Can she come in and, it's not a matter of touch and finesse, but can she come in and can she volley? But there's another case where so much money, years ago, players played everything. Years ago, when they played the majors, and now it's tougher on the body because the ball travels so fast. But people played mixed in addition to playing doubles and singles. And it's just like you could tell when we watched the Olympic doubles, Austin Krajicek is pounding balls at Alcaraz. He's at the net. Well, they know that he's going to be weaker at the net. I guess he played 4 doubles matches. And then, it was kind of fun to watch Rajiv Ram in some ground stroke exchanges, and when it was one up, one back with Rafa.
Yeah, I know. He's got to be like,
and he hung in there, won a few,
No, for sure.
But they were 2 singles players, and the craft of doubles, they need some help. Even Nadal, he won the gold medal. He was the first one to say that was the luckiest thing, because he won a gold medal playing doubles. If you watch Wawrinka and Federer, the way they can play doubles, they're doubles players.
Yeah,
totally. They won gold as well.
Yeah, I think they also understand that you play singles different than you play doubles, but you can use the skill sets that you have in doubles in singles. obviously what we're talking about going forward. But yeah, you give Sabalenka Luchova's instincts. Sabalenka is so long. She's a long girl. It's a big ball. You know, if she can get into the net, you got to assume that little anticipation she's going to succeed. But at this point, I guess it's tough because she just won the U.S. Open, so she's probably not thinking about changing much about her game unless she's smart, and then she could still be like, all right, I do some real damage. But
Evil
is it
Knievel.
Muchova? Is it Muchova, the girl that?
Yeah. We're talking about Muchova. Evil Knievel. Listeners, young kids listening with their parents in the car, perhaps. Jeff Lewis was a little crazy on a motorcycle, but Evil is crazier than you on a motorcycle. That's how you got your first helicopter ride, right?
Yeah. Just paid that off recently, actually.
But with Evil Knievel, what he said is, God created man and Winchester made him equal. Well, don't want to talk about guns, what goes going on in American society, but Sabalenka's got a gun. That serve is ba-boom.
It is. Her ground strokes, too, are huge.
Yeah, then the other thing, too, is that it happened to Fritz. It's one thing to hit short, but hit short and wide. You're going to be much better off if you could hit short and centered than short and wide. Yeah. People need to understand that.
Oh, yeah. No.
So when someone's serving that well, you've got to go center because you don't want them to be able to spread the court. You know, coming back to Braden, the number of steps. So if Pegula is just getting it back to the service line, the next thing you know is she's running from one side to the next. And then you have a much better chance of having the racket face be vertical hit by swinging fast and swinging slow. So in other words, a Jim Lair thing. And Jim wasn't a guy to get into the technique of it, but you're better off being a one ball blast than a forever push.
Yeah.
You know, that happened to Fritz too many times. And he's getting in the corner, but, you know, like Agassi. Agassi, I love to listen to Agassi. You know, you would have been better off hitting it in the bleachers than slicing the forehand. Because then this guy, center, he moves up and he can crank on both sides.
Yeah, no, I think, again, you know, the little things, I don't think Pegula did anything huge wrong, but I think Sabalenka just a few less unforced errors, hit the ball a little bigger. What do you think Pegula's brain type is?
She's very mature. Again, you know, sitting in section F having some popcorn. I think she's an I.
Yeah.
I think she's an S. Could be wrong, but in the moment, you know, all the different preferences, being a sensate, you know, Vic Braden, the kid who's playing basketball, give me the ball and let me take a shot. I don't care how many, there's only 2 seconds left on the clock.
Yeah.
Ends, you know, I mean, Roger Federer did okay. He's an end, you know, where they're ahead of themselves a little bit if I get this point. No, I would say that she's a J.
Yeah.
The whole thing about like center, you know, even though he's so reserved, he's gonna smile a lot sooner than Pegula or Fritz.
Yeah, no, it's possible. I think, you know, I think Jays, when they start to get behind a little in the match and what they're doing is not working, can get a little flustered. But I also think with Pegula, it's like, you know, it's how do you prepare for that? You know, I mean, you got to, you know, Sabalenka's serves coming in close to 120. You know, I mean, unless you're like finding some pro guys that, I'm hoping, you know, she's finding pro guys that have hit the ball really, really hard at her because she's not taking a ball like that, except that one match a year in a tournament. So then I definitely think like that speed of the ball getting, like all of a sudden the ball's coming 2-3 miles an hour faster on the serve and the ground strokes. And it's like, I just think it knocks you out of your rhythm a little bit. The rhythm you have to be faster on, you know, which you're supposed to be in front of in the first place.
You know, what's amazing with, like, say, mixed doubles, even at the Olympics, where they're there, spend a little more time with one another, they don't really practice.
Yeah.
They get together, and I heard this from Klaas and Rajiv Ram played with Venus Williams. And hey, let's talk about what we're going to do. And she goes, I'm just going to hit it as hard as I can.
Yeah.
And, you know, Richard, maybe this is not appropriate, but being on the inside, as Richard used to say, doubles is killing the white turkey at the net, you know, with, you know, he had a good sense of humor. You can have a little fun with everything. Don't take that personally, but yeah, I mean the Williams sisters, a girl that we spent time with, Karina Murari, she won Wimbledon doubles with Davenport. She's on our website. She was a racket low, taught really well. Father Alvin, I mean, he's a brain surgeon, but he used to go to teachers' conferences and he studied the game. And they were seeing me a couple times a week, twice a week, and I was just charting matches. And her coach would come with her. And I finally got Alvin and I said, hey, let me film her. No. I said, let me just show you the film. The daughter doesn't have to see it. Coach doesn't have to see it. And showed her that she took the racket low twice on the backhand. And next day she was scheduled to go to Europe. They didn't go. And, but anyway, so she played really good doubles. So who wins? Two superior athletes with an inferior system, or two inferior athletes with a superior system? Sure. So the athletes win. Yeah. And that's where, the whole thing, winning's not confusing, it's totally confusing. We had a podcast where Yvonne, we're talking about attending these college tennis matches before the University of Virginia got beat up a little bit because they were hosting this round of 16 men and women. And you go to a college tennis match and, coming back to Ronnie, she's not very tall, but because of pretty strong legs. But you go to a college tennis match, it looks like, these really elite athletes playing 3-5 country club doubles.
Yeah. No.
So the coaches, they walk on eggshells. It's like, no, I'd rather lose than play this way.
Yeah. You
were part of that not Tyler Junior College, Hillsborough Community College.
Yeah.
For 10 years. It's like, we have two rules. We have more than that, but the tennis rules, you're not going to play if you have a palm up serve, and you're not playing if you serve and stay back. We're going to go to the net on both. And it's kind of cool. The girl who actually won, it was a key, for her to hold serve for them to win the national title. But she had played 4 years of high school tennis, playing one up, one back. It's like, no. But then they're just wired so poorly.
Yeah, no, I think that team was a great experiment, in abilities, because I feel like the first year, obviously, you didn't win the national title the first year, but you give it a little time. I'm
pretty sure we were in the finals 4 years, and it was a fun project. It was how's it go? Full-time work and part-time pay. But the nice thing was we could interface it with the junior program. Yeah. But those stories go unheard of. Like you helped me with a lot of players that they changed the rule, but we used to have a program where we have, say it's like 10 kids every year. They were high school graduates. No one wanted them. They were on nobody's radar. But they came in for 1 year and say, at the end of this, you'll be able to play college tennis. They didn't go off to the big time Power 5 conferences, but they learned how to play.
Yeah, sure.
Anything else on that women's match?
I think I didn't get to watch as much of it as you did, but the little things again. I'm always curious how players. I'm so fascinated about what players train, how players train off the court, on the court, but outside of the matches. Like, what are they dedicating their time to get ready for matches, and what's important to them to keep sharp? And
I don't know Mark Merklin, but I met him through Scotty Perelman, University of Florida. Paul Roeder told me one time, we're paying him $100,000 a year so James Blake doesn't eat junk food. And he was, he won the NCAAs. He's from the Bahamas. Mark Knowles, who's one of the other coaches from the Bahamas. I know that Krajicek, he went to some pro-am in the Bahamas, and obviously with Pegula, she's being coached by them now, and she said it's really helped her movement. Pegula is so solid mentally, yes, but mentally, emotionally. But I'm talking about someone who has a great base. She's fundamentally very good. And she can volley, but she needs to volley more. And you just listen to people in interviews that she goes, well, I'm never going to be as explosive as Swiatek. She's using first names, but it's why Swiatek and Goff. And she needs work on her serve. That's where you've got to hold serve. When you're playing against someone like Sabalenka, hang in there to break. fair enough. If you're playing really well against Sabalenka, I mean, it's like, well, okay, you got to at least get the tiebreakers.
Yeah.
You got to hold your own serve.
And then you're more likely to get that serve to start to cave a little bit. If you can keep some pressure on her, you got a chance.
People that that, I mean, maybe even were with me, worked with these guys, Ryler DeHart for sure, Brian Wilson, and Jeremy Wurtzman, they all have a win over Isner. 7-6, 7-6, 7-6, 7-6, 7-6, 7-6. We were one time in a van with a group of players, and kids now have their phones, and Brian Wilson beat Karlovic. And some kid in the back goes, bet you the score was 7-6, 7-6. It's like, oh, okay, that kid knows a little bit about tennis.
Yeah.
There's so much from the, with the Open, what a party. But again, tell us, at least update us on the doubles more. Yeah. Not till the end of the tournament. Now you can. I mean, I watched some junior matches with, I didn't get a chance to see Dan Evans. I understand he broke a record for the longest match. I love to watch Dan Evans play.
I think I heard something about that.
That guy is fast. I mentioned Massetti. He's somebody who's got all these skills. My story, I probably said it before in this podcast, is I was at Saddlebrook, and Leon Smith, the British Davis Cup captain, he was just frustrated with Dan Evans and asked me if I'd run the drills. I said, yeah. And every drill I did, I said, okay, feed the ball in. The other person has to play a one-hand underspin, backhand approach shot, then play it out. All right, now back at the baseline, throw the ball up high. You got to come in off your approach volley on the backhand side and play it out. But
all the drills you would have done. All the drills you were saying that he would have done.
Yeah, the right up his alley. Okay. Yeah. With
but back to that point. I was at Houston, sat down. I was actually watching Rahm and Krajicek play some exciting doubles match
at the Olympics.
No, Houston.
Houston. Okay, all right. At River Oaks.
Yeah, River Oaks, and I'm just sitting watching this match. It was just so much fun. It was such a fun match to watch doubles, fast pace, acrobatics, real doubles. It was so much fun, and I think that just goes to show. To me, it's like if you can't get people to sit down and watch doubles, you don't know. Your marketing is horrible, because good doubles, it's fun to watch. You should be able to put it on TV. You should be able to get people in the stands a little bit if you're marketing it at all. If you're putting it out there a little bit, people will watch it. So,
but Mike Carter, it was fun to see him a couple of weeks ago. So Mike Carter, he wants to work for the USTA. And he's now worked with him, I think, 31 years. So he's interviewed. Each section, the 17 sections, used to have someone who would run the school assemblies. You'd go to junior highs mostly and promote tennis. And Carter is, he's from Austin, wanted to be in Austin, so he gets turned down the first time. So he was with me for 5 years. So he goes to work for Vandermeer. Another time he got turned down. The second time he went to work for Braden in Europe. So he eventually gets the job. But with Carter, Carter gets down and all, he gets down with Dennis Vandermeer's dog, and they're wrestling in the dirt. And every time he sees the dog, they just grabs the dog and they're rolling around wrestling. And Dennis goes, "My dog likes you." So Dennis Vandermeer, he was so cool. He have electronics where he could just push a little button, and there's a speaker on every court. Like, he might not know exactly what court Carter was on. He'd go, "Michael, go take Heike for a walk." He'd be the group. We go, "Oh, I gotta go hit some serves." And but I remember Mike Carter, if Dennis could do this, is Dennis would teach the serve and teach the volley and say, "Okay, that's good enough. Now we can play doubles." And I can remember Carter saying, "This is so cool that you can do it where it's no poaching, but you have to come in.
Yeah,
you have to come in and then just have some fun with it. You can get club players to play doubles the right way."
Oh yeah, for sure. No, I one up, one back. I mean, I've had a lot of success with just ladies teams, just getting them to come in, even if they get stuck at the service line. Just good things happen once you get up there. But it's the same thing. They go the first time, they just watch the ball go by them. They go the second time, you see them start to hesitate, organize their feet.
Oh yeah, for senior players, for example, you can't tell a senior player go in and hang around the service line and then you go from there. The ball's going to become a little bit slower. You can't, all right, go in like you're going to be ballistic and explosive and really get back for the overhead.
Yeah. But it still works. I think, I always tell people go to like nationals. I don't care what division you're looking at, the national champions, if it's 2-5, 3-0, 3-5s, the teams that usually win nationals, they're just taking the ball out of the air, kind of working their way in, going forward, So
with, certainly, the U.S. Open comes around, and I'm curious the people that I've directly or indirectly had something to do with. So like Jackson Withrow, it's just great to see this guy. He's from Nebraska. He signed for A&M, and Steve Denton, it was like mandatory. He had to come and spend a week with me. I think it was a very little impact. I mean, but videos were made, and Coach Denton would have had has the tapes, and but guy can play doubles. He's athletic. He serves and goes forward. And I mean, last year I think for sure he was in the year-end tournament where the best 8 teams go. He might be on track to do that again. I don't know, but but I was asked this today, or read this today. Someone asked me about Ashton Kruger. Now, I was on the court with her certainly a couple times when she was a really little kid, because she was brought up at Brookhaven. And I know you saw it on Instagram, Brookhaven Instagram made a comment. And Dave Anderson's been on this podcast many times, and just saw him. We did this workshop at Baylor University. And she had a good tournament for the pocketbook for sure. She got to the third round.
Yeah.
And she lost 1-1. What's the name of the person she lost to?
Samsonova.
Yeah. So the gentleman asked, so Ashton Kruger was a great bass player, and Samsonova, he says, looked more like a great bass player. And he questioned the grip. And just interesting. And obviously Kruger is very good. I mean, she won the Orange Bowl, she won the 18s. And if you're in the third round, it's like Center was saying that it doesn't matter who I'm playing. If they're in the finals of the U.S. Open, they're good. They're really good. So if you're in the third round, I don't know how far her grip is over. I do know that we certainly really push to have players on 3. Like Braden would say, if you have the grip on 3, then you got to just push the palm down like you're dribbling basketball. I mean, I know for sure. I spent a lot of time at Brookhaven that the players, there's some allowance where we even tell people, well, turn on 3, so then you have better options. We lost that battle with Austin Krajicek. He went to volunteers too soon. Someone said, well, he went to the jungle too early. I mean, he's a great player, and he has the grip closer to what Connors has on the forehand side. And it's really interesting. You can know a player's game and know more about their game than they do, if you know the technical side. Because one, they grow away from it. Then 2, they're not around people who even talk about nuts and bolts. And, but we have more of a captive audience. People come to see us, they're on an airplane. They come in, they check into a hotel, rent a car. They come with their parents the first time. And, so Anderson has that problem where the parents may go to the Lakes Academy or T-Bar M, people recruit as players. It's mostly outdoor tennis in Dallas, 12 months out of the year. But I really couldn't comment on her grip because, one, I really didn't watch her play that closely. But say, for example, she was with Anderson from age 8 to 16. And I know that she's been back there off and on. I know Matt Clore, for just a blink of an eye when he was with the USTA, was hopeful that he would have been in her corner. I've seen her play too many times, 1-up, 1-back doubles. And I know when she was brought up at Brookhaven, that wasn't the case. And she's a big gal. I'm going to guess she's 6 feet tall. And she should just have a doubles partner where she's going to go forward. But the same thing is that, you have to train. You have to start the course and stay the course. So I just have down with a comment with that is that I talked to Dave Anderson about that, and I said, you should be in charge of the brain trust. She's old enough now. She's making money. She's a pro. She's a professional. Say, well, this is what I recommend. I'll be in charge of your brain trust. Who's in your inner circle? Let's discuss that. And this is how, this is, everybody's going to be on the same page. And, it's amazing with, say, Wimbledon. Everybody wants to win Wimbledon. Do they play? And granted, the grass is slower. And now, but pretty much Raven would say this. Because before Raven got married and had children, when he's a tennis nut like you. So he would just hang out at the courts. He's playing his doubles, but he's just going to hang out. I know he's doing some things with the Indian Tennis Federation that just based on speed. I used to tell kids, I guess it was in the 90s, right? Where I would tell girls, you're slow, but you're faster than Lindsay Davenport. So Davenport is number one in the world, but she was not going to win any schoolyard races. Eugene Scott. The fastest tennis players in the world would not win a schoolyard race, but you got to analyze to anticipate. You're Taylor Fritz staying closer to the baseline. People watch that. It was amazing how they were pounding the ball, but he pretty much backed up one step on every ground stroke.
Yeah, sure.
And
to be fast, to be quick.
But with that, a brain trust, Andy Fitzel for a short period of time, this girl, Dinah Schneider, she obviously has the it thing. Story there is Natalia Sorkin was just here. You had a chance to work with her daughter. I know you're doing some film work. And you're going to be probably the 10th person that's going to be telling her the same thing. Because she's worked with a lot of people from our network. Natalia's daughter, Tasia. She has an Instagram page, which is educational. I don't think, if I've said from the get-go, she doesn't need to have an Instagram page. Gives you the sense of that you've already made it. And people following you. I've been coaching her. People have to take their photo with her, and it's like, no, that's not good. It's just it's very confusing. But with that, Natalia grew up with Diana Schneider's mother in Moscow. Asked me what to do. I said, hey, I would go to NC State and work with coaching staff, learn to play all over the court, learn to play from the service line in. So she went there. And then Dave Secker, who's at NC State, he was first hired by Jimmy Johnson. So he's been a student of what we're a student of for 15 years anyway. And so Schneider, we're Andy Fitzel, 2.5 months. I'm on my phone, her drop hitting backhands But again, I think Dave Secker should be in charge of the brain trust. But who's the boss? It's like in junior tennis, the parents writing the check. So now Diana Schneider, I'm going to guess that she'd be closer to $2 million a year versus $1 million a year. And that's who do players listen to? With Dimitrov, he had a decent U.S. Open, with a great athlete. He had 7 coaches for 7 years.
On the tour?
On the tour. And so then you take, I think of Matt Clore, who worked with Mackenzie McDonald, or Patrick Gibson. I don't think he was in the main draw this go around. He's really struggled with injuries, but he was number 1 in every age group. That's a pretty safe bet. But way up there, loves tennis. And it just kind of baffles me because if like a Dave Anderson or Dave Secker or Matt Clore, they have information that the coach who's working with them doesn't have the information. It's like, well, let's get all on the same page. And that phrase is used all the time. Oh, we're all on the same page. No, you're not even from the same book. In fact, there isn't a book. But so anyway, a gentleman asked me that is tactically, GreatBase, a lot of times people, coming back to Kruger, is tactically, people don't think about the GreatBase. It's kind of like Braden. His favorite drill is a rat-a-tat-tat. 2 players line up and they just go at each other. The 4 corner drills that Braden does, where you feed balls and you have to touch one corner, turn around in the service box. You go touch the corner, and there's 4 corners, and you just turn around, and then you have to just go to the net, touch the net, go back, and you're up and back, and it's not my favorite drill. It's like, whoa, that's a tough drill to do. But then people are breaking, they're changing direction, they're moving in, and they're going, they're hustling, and he called himself Fat Albert. Fat Albert knew the game backwards and forwards. So, it's just a red flag. It's like, you're playing doubles the wrong way. This is an opportunity for you to serve and go in. And then also, short ball. We were doing a drill the other day. Only one side could attack. So we have 8 players playing. You were one of the players. So 8 players are rallying. 4 courts in our forest, and pretty setting. Rally 6 balls. Only one side could come in. Only one side could be the attacker. And it's just principle based. When it's short, and then come in and win in the green zone, and come in and just drive the volley, close in. The Stefan Edberg, Vic Braden. If you play well, after you hit the volley, you should be able to take one step and touch the net. And if you're playing really well, you don't even have to take a step. You're just in. And on her side serving, Pagula went straight through Kruger at Wimbledon. And she gets ground reaction for. She gets set, and she hits solid groundies. And and I don't think I think she's this way. I don't think she's a roller coaster. But we can wrap this up. But I think with who's in charge. Mentioned my older brother. He's been in charge of some NHL hockey teams, and what he used to do is he would send his staff. His coaching staff, he had connections with the New York Giants. And it's like, okay, the offense and the defense and the special teams, but it's all one. It's all on the same page. And there's a game plan, there's a huddle. These are patterns that we are going to execute. A lot of kids in junior tennis, for sure. I remember working with, I had a lot of fun working with a really competitive kid. I remember trying to get him to play left-handed. And then even then, he can work on tactics. Riley Smith, good enough to play at Northwestern. Riley, are you listening? Smith. I said, you have no patterns. Tell me some patterns that you have. Do you ever arc a ball, then bring a person in intentionally? Do you ever serve and volley? You ever take a second serve and come in? Just list off patterns. And you're just banging from balls from the baseline, and occasionally you slap at a forehand. And you fight your fanny off. But what else you got, Lewis? Anything you want to end this podcast with? I hope this has been educational for our listeners.
Yeah, no, I've learned a lot too. I think, it is always interesting to me when kids leave college and go pro, who ends up being their coach. It just seems so random. It's always like someone they met at college or something. It's like, well, who got you to college? It just doesn't ever make sense.
Oh, they don't even go back.
Yeah.
A lot of times. No, I remember Chad Clark, he played at the University of Texas. And I think he was on tour 9 months, didn't like it. But his first year, he's 1 point away from qualifying for Wimbledon. And, Chad had some big wins. I remember him winning the individual event in college tennis. But he stayed in Austin. And, he's playing golf with his, former college buddies. You don't stay near a college campus, like a J.J. Wolf. He's from Cincinnati, but Andy Fitzell helped him with so much. It's like, no, you need to go to Germany. If Andy's based in Germany, he's working with a Australian gal. It's like, no, you got to go where your coach is. It's like 365 days, 24/7. But also, too, another thing that happens is I've been so popular with college coaches, and I've made quite a few phone calls here recently just for one player. They're asking about another player. And, it's like you're their best friend. But once that kid signs, you almost never hear from the coach.
Yeah, sure.
You almost never hear from the coach.
Sure. And then they have 4 years to leech onto them. So if they do go pro, I'm sure it's like, now they have that year and that control of it.
Well,
I forget where they come
in
from.
that age group, especially the boys, with age 18 to 22, 23. One of the most difficult places to be professional. Talking about Craig Tiley. remember him saying that one of the most difficult places to be a professional is a college campus. Hey, there's a keg of beer. Hey, there's a beer party. Hey, it's Tuesday. Let's celebrate Tuesday. What are you going to do tomorrow? We're going to celebrate Wednesday.
Yeah.
Party, party, party.
Yeah. Well, I think the irony is the better you do, I think the better you do as a coach, the earlier you get them, the better you teach them, the less they have any idea where they came from. Because you've made it conscious competence very quickly. They're not thinking, they don't have to think about a lot. They're just out there playing free and they have good fundamentals and they just don't remember where they came from,
Well, I've been told that we have parents that play these podcasts in the car, so we don't swear. It does help to swear once in a while. But SHIT.
Store high in transit.
Store high in transit. That's where the word came from. It's storing fertilizer above a ship. But only way to grow is each. Only way to grow is each. Oh, gotta look at, Yvonne's looking at it. He's gonna edit that. But that's what happens. That's what happens to most players. Like say how many years you spent with Ryder DeHart, is that going back to the well. But it's like, no, I've outgrown that, and they get to the point where no one's going to talk to me like that anymore. And I did a workshop out in California years ago. I was very flattered that Elliot Telscher, he initially was with Braden at a very, very young age, and then with Lansdorp. And, he came and sat in the seminar. And I asked Telscher, I said, the way Robert Lansdorp talked to you when you were a kid, and he goes, he talks to me the same way today. And Robert, he goes, oh, now that you're a millionaire. He talks like Rocky Balboa. Now that you're a millionaire, you can't do that anymore. And that's the outgrow that side of it. Hamlin said it on one of these podcasts, Mark Hamlin, who is that, one, do they have the truth? And two, do they have the guts to deliver the truth? And I think it's a pro level. They're walking around eggshells too much. Like Taylor Fritz, he's doing okay. He comes from wealth anyway. And I think that's another thing with Pagula and Navarro. It's too bad the media's always bringing that up. And now I'm bringing it up that you can have an affluent kid and be really hungry, not affluenza. And, so are they going to just work and work and work? And then, can they take the grief, come back and go? But, I think the top players in tennis, when they do go to college, a lot of times they're treated like superstars. When we were helping Raven Clausen out, I finally asked John Doran. By that time, John Doran, you were around for that. John Doran played at Harvard, and I was looking for someone who was over the age of 25. One of the reasons for that is just the cost of renting a car. It wasn't like 24, no, 25. And another reason, we didn't want an American. There's a lot of people in the tennis teaching business, I hate to say it, they don't want to hire an American because there's a few lazy Americans. And then another thing is that we didn't want someone who had played college tennis. Now, Doran played at Harvard. And, wanted to say, hey, we're looking for someone to travel and play with Raven Clausen. You'd even be a playing coach. And Wielander got in some trouble one time and said that the worst thing about college tennis is everything's taken care of. There's a positive, playing on a team, playing those pressure matches. I always ask college players, you ever play a 3-all match? But when a kid plays in college, granted they're working 20 hours a week and they're a student athlete and they got a lot on their plate with academics, but there's so much done for them. When they go out on the tour, they got to take care of everything. But last word is yours, and we'll shut up. We didn't really spend that much time on the U.S. Open, but
I think we hit the important stuff.
How to go with Braden? We shared 50 points with 50 people, and they misinterpreted in 50 different ways. Do the math, but you got to keep trying. Got to keep on trying. Education, education, education.
Yeah, the little things. Don't forget the little things. Move better, hit better, rally better. And I think one thing we touched on a lot was just go to the net. Go to the net. Don't, only go to pick up your ball and shake hands.
You go to the net early. Roger Federer, good things happen when you go to the net.
Sure.
But Jeff Lewis, we love Jeff Lewis. We love your love for tennis. Give me the high five. Wave goodbye to the camera. Another podcast in the booth, or in the box. Ooh. Is that a senior moment or brain cramp combination?
Another podcast in the books.
In the books. All right. Adios. Thanks, everybody. Yvonne Mosley.